Black Card Rehab, the show where we go from zero to black, one episode at a time. I am joined by my white friend Paige. Hi, Paige.
Hello.
On a scale of 0 to black, how are you feeling today?
This is gonna be a weird one.
Okay.
But I quilt as a hobby because I'm secretly 87 years old, and quilting is predominantly old white ladies. That's the lay of the land, and the biggest quilt supply provider came out in support of Black Lives Matter this week.
Whoa.
So I'm feeling them right now because
What's their name?
Missouri Star Quilt Company. So
Okay.
somebody wrote them an open letter like, are you going to say shit about this? And they were like, yeah, we are. Black Lives Matter. Also, we're starting scholarships. Here are the amounts and stuff. And the comments on that post, it's like you had all the quilters under the age of 50 being like, yes! And then everyone else being like, how dare you? And it was
Wait, they still let them have the
wild. Internet? I mean, well, they've shut off comments to all subsequent posts because it just so happened that so they're kind of interesting in that they're a family that lived in a town that was dying, and they started a quilt shop and it became a huge thing, and they basically saved their town. And so it's this inspiring story. But then the owner's birthday was the next day, and they had to shut off comments because people were just like, how dare you? Just on her birthday post. And I as hilarious as it has been, I feel terrible for them because, you shouldn't have to deal with that level of hate, especially when you're doing good things. But they basically have just kept doubling down of God says love everyone. So we love everyone. Fuck y'all. They need our help. Fuck y'all. Amazing. So great. That is on my scale of 0 to African American. That is how I'm feeling today. And Kristal, on a scale from 0 to African American, how are you feeling today?
I would guess I'll stay in the theme of corporations, and I'll say I'm feeling Ben and Jerry's.
Yes.
Man, Ben and Jerry's. Whoo! I mean, talk about getting it.
I love the memes that came out after they did their statement.
Oh my god, the one, yeah. The generic versus Ben and Jerry's is Black Lives Matter versus Ben and Jerry's is Black Lives Matter, fuck you, fuck white supremacy.
Well, what was hilarious is I saw the meme and I was like, that sounds like Ben and Jerry's. They've been doing that for years. But then I went and read their actual statement. I was like, not
it's
far
not
off.
Very different.
Not far off. So great. That's one that I'm like, I know your PR person didn't write this. I know that you were just like, fuck 12. And that was, you just posted it. It was great. So great.
It's so awesome. Well, let's see. The thing that we're going to talk about today, which you don't know about, it's a surprise.
I don't. You told me it was a surprise, and I'm excited. Let's do it.
Yes. So this is an homage / homework that I've had on my plate since the beginning of this podcast. I finally listened to Pimp a Butterfly.
Really?
Yes.
Oh man. See, I haven't listened to it this week, and now I'm gonna feel unprepared, but I am anxious to hear your thoughts.
So, yeah, I mean, feel free to pull up the lyrics if you want to, but
I will probably.
Yeah. So I guess my first thing was, so just for the listeners, if you're just joining us, if you haven't listened to the episode when he was K-Dot with Keenan Baker, I recommend going back and listening to that one, because that's an episode with Keenan, and he talks a lot about Kendrick Lamar's roots, and kind of gives kind of his whole backstory and, you know, where leading up to where we're at now. And I had never listened to a full Kendrick Lamar album at that time and up until yesterday.
This is the blackest one, and that's saying something.
Yes, it is the blackest one. And now I also understand when you had said that you had heard it, and Keenan was like, what did you think of that as a white person? I was like, because afterwards I was like, what did she think of this? Because
I felt bad. but also I don't think that's a bad thing. And I think that's a place that people need to get to in understanding their privilege, where you can hear criticism and not just be like, how dare you? And be like, have I contributed to this? Because this is a time for me to look inside and, you know, try to make sure that I'm doing the best I can do and hear these things and accept them and not fight them. It's as a white person, it's a rough listen for sure. But that's okay. Art's not supposed to be easy. You know, Roots is a tough watch for a white person. Django Unchained, slightly less so, because you really, really root for them to kill Whitey. And like, I don't know. I feel like more white people should listen to things like this. Like, don't be afraid to experience art that may paint you in a bad light, because it is a time for introspection. But yeah, that said, it's a rough listen the first time around, especially if you haven't seen Roots. Then it's not going to make sense.
Well, because I was listening, and there's a lot of things that came up for me while listening. I would say, I mean, just off the top, I mean, related to the question of how you felt, I was like, not having grown up in a hood, but like definitely being a black person and being a black artist, going through several iterations of identity, and I was like, I feel all of this in my bones.
Yeah.
And I'm like, when I'm listening, it really reminded me of how I felt watching Get Out, where I was like, yes,
finally people see.
Yes, and I don't even know, like, but it also felt like it was black art to, for, and about black people. Like, I felt spoken to. So I guess that was my first feeling, and I was like, there's some things that you just won't get, and I don't mean understand, but I mean like feel, unless you are black. When listening to this album, I can see some of the meaning being able to be like interpreted and kind of deduced, but the feeling, like the deep core feeling, I'm like, there's nothing else beside, I can't pinpoint anything in my life, in my identity, besides being black, that makes me able to feel this in my core right now.
And I think that's part of what white people struggle with this album, is the understanding that it's not for us, and an acceptance of the idea that not all art is for everybody, and sometimes that's what makes it such good art. And I think that's something that is tough for white people, because art is almost always for us, and that's the problem. Like, that's a thing that needs to change. That's why we need more diversity in filmmaking, in music, in writing, everything, because art has been for us for a long ass time. And our inability to accept when it's not for us is wild. Especially, like, I feel like personally, both listening to this album and watching, you know, even films like Get Out, which, yes, is for everybody, but is really not for white people. I think for me, that helped me experience and enjoy art that was not specifically made for me, and appreciate even when it's not for me. like find the merits of it outside of it being directed to me as an audience.
Yeah, I mean, woo.
Yeah, what a week to listen to this, Kristal.
I mean, but that's a lot of
It's the perfect time. It is the perfect time.
I'm like, let's do it.
Yeah.
And it also, so this is the other thing that came up for me is it really started to really cause me to reflect on all of the reasons why I hadn't listened to it, which is beyond like, I wish I was a more curious person than I am.
Mm-hmm.
But there's more. There's a deeper thing. There's deeper things because as I was listening to it, all these things were coming back to me, like feelings I had or the choices that I'd made and the reason why. And so one of them being, I have this thing, and I know a lot of Black people have it, but I have this thing when something becomes so popular that like either the first time you heard it or the first time you like hear about it or the first time you hear a lot of people talking about it and how much they love it is white people, but it's a Black thing.
Yeah,
I'm
I feel that.
immediately like, nah, dude, like, nah, fam, it's not for me.
That's how I knew to be suspicious of Candace Owens, is when I was only hearing about it from white people, and I was like, this doesn't seem right. And then I read her tweets, and I was like, this is not right at all.
So I think, I mean, and that just, probably just had to do with a locational thing, like
Mm-hmm.
where I was at, like living in my communities at the time, like the only people I heard talking about it the most were white people.
Mm-hmm.
But that, I think that just speaks to like his fame at that time. Like
Yeah.
he was just bigger than, he was just bigger than Black music at the time.
Yeah.
And so there's that. And then I was remembering, I think it must have been, was it a Grammys performance? The one where he had like, I mean, I remember
he basically
seeing that.
Did Roots on stage. It was amazing.
And I remember crying.
Yeah.
And I was trying to remember like what from that point, like why at that point didn't I say to myself, I need to know everything about him, because I felt deeply connected to what was happening on stage, the music, the lyrics. And I can't pinpoint I can't pinpoint a reason other than at some point I probably just decided, like, just subconsciously, I'm not really like, I don't need to be into rap to prove my Blackness. And that kind of just took me down this path of like, I don't need to, know about it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And then there's this other aspect of it, which is one of my exes was really into Kendrick Lamar. And I think there's an aspect of my brain that was like, and let me just say, if I don't know if there's Black people listening to this, but do not let your ex take away Kendrick Lamar from you. That's if there's anything that you get from this episode, do not let the devil steal your joy. Okay? The devil, Lucy, whatever you want to call her, okay? Do not let your ex take Kendrick Lamar from you. It doesn't belong to him.
I was just comparing this to like my own life, and I was like, I'm pretty sure that previous relationships aren't the only reason I don't listen to Nickelback, but it might be a factor. I wouldn't have gleaned any cool music. So, but yeah, absolutely don't let the devil steal your joy when it comes to Kendrick Lamar. That is something that should transcend relationships. This is one of those things where, do you remember, we are both of an age where we should remember this. Back in the day, before music was all digital, when people would break up with someone and then they would have to either get their CDs back or replace their entire CD collection.
Yes.
Kendrick Lamar is the CD you keep. That's the one that's like, I don't know, I don't have your Kendrick CD. You should go buy a new one, and you just like secretly hoard it.
Uh-huh. Absolutely. Um so I mean, I guess remind me of your favorite songs from this album.
So one of the best songs of this album for me is How Much a Dollar Cost. And I think that's one
Okay.
that white people should fucking listen to, because it basically explores the difference in economic experience for everyone. And it's presented in a way that for me makes sense. Like, it's one of the first times I heard that concept broken down in a way that for me mathematically made sense. Where I was like, exactly, because to this person it's this amount and then this amount, and that's how it breaks down. And I think that is probably, I from an educational standpoint, I would say that's probably my fame. Everyone loves King Kunta. You can't not. It's the song from the album. But like,
Okay.
yeah. Oh no, go ahead. Feel free to ask questions.
Well, the thing is, so I love King Kunta, but the second time I was listening to it, I was like, this is the most, I don't know how to put it. It's the most fun sad song I've ever heard.
Yes, and something I have learned about myself as an adult is that I really enjoy fun sad songs or beautiful sad songs. And this is one of them where I'm like, this is devastating, but damn if it isn't catchy. And that, I think, is kind of the brilliance of Kendrick with this album, is a lot of these songs are inescapably catchy. Like, all right, catchy. You can't stop singing them to yourself. And in that, you are forced to continually reckon with the truth that he is putting into his music. That is brilliance. Because even as a white person, I cannot deny that those songs are catchy. And in listening to them and singing them to myself, I have to continually reckon with what he is saying about both the Black community and also white people's position in continual subjugation. Like, that is important. And I think that's why this album is so brilliant. You know, it's hard to make such heavy topics catchy, but he does. I think, and I know I've brought up Ben Folds on this show before, which is just how white I is. But he has a song called Brick. It's been around since the 90s. It's not new to anybody. And the song is about him and his high school girlfriend getting an abortion the day after Christmas. Devastatingly sad subject matter. And that song is catchy as hell. And like, you talk to any plaid shirted 30-something, they know that song. And everyone's like, yeah, that's like the Ben Folds song. And I feel like King Kunta is like that. That's the one everyone knows from the album. That has the most plays on iTunes. That's the one they, you know, everyone knows it. And yet you're like, but also, like, this is what it's about. This is why it's so, to keep it close to the vest, City High, I think, is a perfect example, which, by the way, went back and listened to after, and that song is terrible as far as subject matter goes. Because it's just a hard story, but then they're just like, bitch, get up on your feet. Stop making excuses. And I'm like, she is doing her best. Right. Stop it. Right. But that's again a song that tough subject matter. And we were on a break recording our other podcast, Cult Podcast, and I started singing it, and Andrea knew it. Like, we both knew all the words to the song with and we're singing the, like, someone's at home crying all alone. I'm like, this is catchy and rough. And then if you go and watch City High on YouTube, the next recommended video is 3LW's No More. So, added bonus.
Okay.
I don't know if you remember that one. Not tough
Yeah,
subject
no,
matter.
yeah, I
But
for sure remember that song. I feel like I sang that at an event one time. I don't know.
well, I re-listened and was surprised to find in the rap where they were like, and that was last year, boy, in the 8th grade. And I was like, are these children?
Oh shit.
Yes. Turns out, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, they did put it in the name.
Yeah.
Three little women. 3 LW.
But anyway, I find catchy, sad songs to be both wildly effective and beautiful, and we should do more of that. More songs with substance.
Yes. I was listening to it, and I think the thing I was most surprised by, just not having any idea about what I was about to hear, was how jazzy it was. Yeah. I mean, I was just like, oh, this is giving me Robert Glasper vibes. And of course, Robert Glasper is one of the people that is involved in the production. I was just like,
he played on it, I think.
Yeah, he was. Yeah. And I think a couple songs, and but it also gave me like seat at the table vibes. Like, I was like, oh, this is exactly how I felt at Seat at the Table. I felt like Seat at the Table had a little more maybe like it didn't feel like it explored as much the pain, I guess.
There's
Like,
a lot of pain
I would
on
say
this album.
I would say 75% of this album is unresolved, and then towards the end, I mean, it's a story.
Yeah.
Versus Seat at the Table, to me, I mean, even though it kind of follows a little bit of like, she's telling different parts of her life and different parts of the Black experience, I didn't feel like there was a lot of unresolved things. Like, to me, Seat at the Table sound like oh, this is somebody who's been to therapy already. Like,
yeah. Whereas I feel like To Pimp a Butterfly sounds like therapy. Like, you haven't been, you're in the middle of it. This is you reckoning with everything. This is you taking stock of your life to this point and the things that you know, and trying to express them in a way that another person can understand.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Okay. So, you said that, what song you said it was your favorite?
How Much a Dollar Costs.
How Much a Dollar Costs. And then, okay. And what else?
I mean, King Kunta, obviously. These Walls are great. Institutionalized, I love Snoop Dogg. So, like, hard to beat it. But also, I actually enjoy when rap music talks about the true, like, I guess, try to the right word, the true impact of the prison industrial complex. And one of my other songs about that is on what is the name of that song? It's on Run the Jewels' 3rd album, and it's the one that they used for Black Panther. This is gonna drive me nuts. Legend Has It. I was like, I know Legend is in the title somewhere. Legend Has It. And in the video, they actually go through prison statistics. And I feel like Institutionalized is kind of similar in my mind as far as like themes, different vibe, obviously, but I actually really, really like it as a song. So, yeah.
I mean, famous line. Now I understand the context of life ain't shit but a fat vagina.
Yeah.
So that now I get it. But I loved. I mean, the song "You" is just so emotional, and then what he does with his voice theatrically in that song, like making it break in the midst of what's essentially like part rap, part spoken word, but really telling the very deep, dark thoughts that he has. I'm like, when do you see men, let alone Black men, being this vulnerable in rap? I'm like, this is amazing. And also, like, yeah, like kind of like what you were saying, calling out because the thing is he's constantly straddling these two worlds of like, what do the rap fans expect, and then what is like the rap executives, I guess, or the label, what does the label want, and then who is he as an artist? What is he supposed to do with his influence? And that's one thing that keeps coming up in that. I guess, is it a poem? Is it a letter? Like, that he says parts of throughout the entire album.
Yeah, and I think one of my favorite things about You as a song is you can look at it in the context of a relationship if you want to. But I think it's actually really interesting to look at it in the context of him writing this letter to, America seems too generic of a term, but it's almost like writing this letter to the world. Mm-hmm. Like, it's his complicated relationship with life in general. It's not even necessarily one specific person. And I think that is kind of a brilliant way to juxtapose a lot of these feelings, so that when he goes into kind of the broader strokes of this song, you're like, oh, this is all of us. This is not just him, Yeah.
Yeah. But when he's talking to himself, when he's saying, like, you're a failure, like, he's saying that about himself, I'm like,
that third verse is rough. Yeah.
It's, man, it's just, what?
Yeah.
And then, obviously You is in direct
to I.
It's direct opposition to I, and I love that song too.
I is a great
just
song.
Like being in somebody's face and being fine.
Mm-hmm. That's success is the best revenge, girl. That's him being like, yeah, fuck you. I'm awesome. Like,
and I love myself.
Yeah. Despite all of your attempts to make me not love myself, I love myself. And despite all I've been through, that would make it hard for me to love myself. I love myself.
I love that so much. Yeah. So then I started, like, going back and, like, looking at, like, all of the things that have been written, all the things that he said about the music. I'm just like, there's nothing but love in it, in the way I, like, because why do you look, here's the thing. Speaking of the word pimp, I really would like to juxtapose the song King Kunta with another song by another famous rapper.
Oh, God.
Pimp Juice.
Yes. Your point.
And I would like to say that King Kunta is a superior song.
Well, yes. Yeah. No, really? Yes, of course it is.
Part of why I thought about it is because, and Mondo talked about this, like, when he was on the podcast, about what, he wanted to know what the reference was to yams.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right? And so, yeah, if you haven't listened to that episode, go back. This whole episode is just a plug for other episodes. But yes. But yeah, so that, that was so interesting. And the reason why it made me think of Pimp Juice is because, so throughout the whole song, Kendrick is using yams as a metaphor for all of the gold, the things that glitter, that people are after, that Black people are after, that they can't help but be after when they get fame. Yeah. Or when, when they're any kind of artist, or just wanting, period, right?
Yeah.
It's all of those things. And throughout the whole song, because it means something and because he has a point, he never reneges on its meaning. Now, Nelly, on the other hand, tells us at the beginning of the song what pimp juice is. Now, my personal opinion is that pimp juice is jizz, okay? But he says that she only wants him for his pimp juice, okay? Now, look, I guess could be a lot of things, but I think the way he uses it, it's clear that it's one thing, right?
Girl, jizz is free.
Yes. And then at the end of the song, he completely backtracks and then tells us pimp juice is anything. And I'm like, no, Nelly, no.
I'm gonna play devil's advocate. I'm gonna play devil's advocate, and I'm gonna argue for Nelly and say that that is an appropriate definition, and that King Kunta supports that definition, because part of it is this idea that Black people are not supposed to invest in gold, diamonds, things once they get famous, and that it's a waste of money, and that they're not smart or fiscally responsible. But in the reality, it's just another way to shame Black people for success. Because it could be anything. You know, it happens to be a chain, but it could have been something else. I mean, how many times have white assholes gotten rich and bought a Ferrari that they can't even drive legally on regular streets? Same shit. Nobody is going out of their way to shame them for doing it. And so I think in Nelly's Pimp Juice, when he's arguing that pimp juice can be anything, it's this idea that it doesn't matter what a Black person does with their success. White people are going to shame them for that because they are mad at the success in general, regardless of what that success brings.
So you're saying pimp juice is about shame?
Yeah.
You didn't even say it with a straight face.
I mean, I'm gonna say that maybe Nelly's not the best lyricist, but I think you could make that argument. Yeah.
I mean, I will say there is something about, like, oh, again, another plug for another episode. Like Aisha was saying, like, there is something about Black culture that, you know, she was saying, I understand why people want to be a part of it. They want to use it. They want to feel like, you know, they understand it and get it, and so I would be fine with that being a definition of pimp juice.
Okay, just the ideal of Black coolness.
Yeah, Black cool. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I would be fine with it being that. Nelly, if you're listening.
And if we ever get Nelly on this show, I have so many questions.
Yes. So, but yeah, I definitely, you know, I was remembering when Keenan was saying he was at a Kendrick concert, and they're saying every word, including the N-word, you know.
Rough.
And yeah, I mean, I just can't imagine, but it's like, it's there. I can't be upset for him being successful and off of, like, I mean, what are you supposed to do? You know what I mean? Like,
I mean, not say it
as an artist. No.
As an artist, okay.
Yeah, as an artist, it's like,
yeah.
Right?
I mean, as an artist, it's your truth. You got to say what you got to say.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate that white people, for some reason, think that entitles them to say it too, and that's not the case. But I would never want to stifle him as an artist, because he's brilliant. He is brilliant. These lyrics are poetry, and they are truth. And in that truth, they are difficult to listen to, and there are harsh words, and there are harsh themes. But that is where his brilliance is. It's that truth. It's the thing that made you feel something. You know, it's that connection that you're able to have because he's speaking so frankly and so honestly. And I would never want to remove his ability to do that. And really, like, we shouldn't have to. White people know better. Ain't nobody walking around like, what do you mean I can't say it? Don't be stupid. We shouldn't have been able to say it forever. Like, I don't know why anyone still has a question about it. They're the ones that should be making a change, not Kendrick.
Yeah, I mean, and here's the other thing, because and I've been having this conversation with my coworkers who is he's Mexican, but he grew up predominantly around Black people, and so he says it, and he's like, and he, you know, but he grew up in the hood, like he still lives in the hood. All his friends say it, you know, and but he'll, of course, you know, through work and through other circumstances, inevitably meet another Black person and then have to contend with, oh, are they okay with me saying it? And so I had to kind of explain to him,
they don't know your
I was like,
background.
they don't know your background, and he's like, I just don't understand, like, why, you know, like, I mean, this is literally how I grew up. Why does it bother people? You know what? You know, and I said to him, I was like, look, you if you were Black, you would never have the ability to hurt me with that word.
Right.
And I think that was the simplest way to explain it, is that you, even if you were angry at me, if you said that word to me and you were Black, you would never be able to hurt me. Like, because there's something about us being both Black that allows me to receive that word. It's couched within probably some other insults that you said, but like, we're both, we both are that word. We both could be that word, right?
Right.
To somebody else. When you are not Black and you use that word, especially if I don't know you, or even if I do know you, but you use that word when you're angry. It's very different.
Yeah. I mean, think about...
And I said, you will never be able to divest yourself of the ability to hurt me with that word.
Absolutely.
That is just not, you don't have that ability.
Yeah. I think of it kind of like, excuse my language, bitch or cunt, where it's very different woman to woman. Over brunch, I could be like, bitch dump him, and nobody would, we wouldn't even interpret it that way. But if a man that I don't know was just like, bitch move, it hurts and I'm gonna hit somebody, like, it is that just innate context. And it goes even further because, like, you could meet any Black person and saying that word is not a threat to you. You know, there are still women who, depending on the intonation, if they said bitch, could still be a threat. But it is this innate understanding that it was a word that was specifically used to hurt people. And you are the group it was used to hurt, and you're not hurting each other with it. And anyone else who comes into that situation, you don't know their intentions. And to be honest, if they had good intentions, they would probably choose another word. Like, the history of that word is so known, you know? And it's not independent of the use ever.
Yeah. So that was a conversation with me and my coworker, and then another one that reminded me, that I was reminded of when I was listening to this album, is when I was listening to the song Complexion, which I love.
That's a great song.
Yeah, it's a great song, and for those of you who haven't listened to the album, it's
a deep cut within the album.
Yeah,
like, it's not one of the ones that's well known, but it's really good.
Right. It's really good, and that's something that I realize that not everybody understands, is that there is an issue of colorism within the Black community, and it has existed for years, for hundreds of years. But let me just say this: all of that, whenever you see Black people saying, like, you know, this, they don't date people that are this color, or they don't like, you know, men that are whatever, like, all of that stems from white supremacy.
Absolutely.
Let's just be 100% clear. All of it stems from white supremacy. This is not something that like black people made up, like this stems from the way that our country is built on certain types and certain races and colors of people that have certain levels of mobility. And there is a thing that apparently not everybody knew it, because I ended up having to explain this to one of my coworkers, that there's this thing going back to the like times of slavery called passing, where if you were light enough as a black person and you could pass for white, you could live in certain places, you could get certain jobs. And so obviously that created a lot of resentment, and that resentment has carryover to now. So that stuff is still happening now, and people are still enacting that hate. And why I love this song is that this truly is, it really is an enlightened person seeing the full picture. And I really love the image of, because he references To Pimp a Butterfly is talking about a caterpillar who can only see its own environment, and then being trapped in the cocoon, being pimped out until they are free and can live above all of the prisons created by society and capitalism.
Absolutely.
And so I love this song because that is a thing that you don't always see in the hood, is people who fully have embraced, and not even just in the hood, it happens even in entertainment circles too. Like I'll see black people that have like made some money and they're creating a movie, and then you'll see a casting that's like, we want a real bad bitch, we're talking light skin, long hair, and I'm like, wait, what? Like, wait, bad bitch to who? You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it's
the sunscreen industry. What?
Yeah. Yeah, so that song really meant a lot to me, and I want and hope for way more of that, because I can't stand that that's still a thing. Yeah, it's upsetting. Just
I am glad. Just in the last few years, I think society has made some strides here in this regard, with the acceptance of Lupita Nyong'o, who is noticeably dark and wonderful, beautiful, famous, getting tons of roles. That makes me so happy, because that is such a departure. Like, I mean, hundreds of years. And white people truly did draw the line of like, here are the people who are allowed to associate with us. And that essentially demonizes anyone of a particular skin color that they had no control over, even within the black community. I think that was really important in Daniel Kaluuya's casting in Get Out. And I was super happy to see it. And I am happy to see that kind of thing continue. I'm glad to see people like Daniel and Lupita keep getting roles. And I want to see more people like that. I think it's important.
Yeah.
Oh, here's something I forgot to bring up and Get Out. And it was one of those things that I found after. They had to light the movie differently than they light most movies because of Daniel's skin color. So most color charts are designed for a specific level of blackness, as it were. And when you get to Daniel's skin color, you have to specifically light him so that he doesn't just disappear into the scenes. So they actually had to do a ton of lighting tests to make sure that wouldn't happen.
Yes, and you know why they had to do a ton of lighting tests is because they're not used to giving a fuck. That's
exactly.
It.
They're not. They've been able to get along for hundreds of years without giving a fuck. And within the film industry specifically, they didn't make those color correcting cards because there was an assumption that people that black would never be in film. That's how deep the racism goes, is that the industry and the technology we had assumed that black people of that color would not be able to participate. Like, digest that, as a person who watches movies. And if you're wondering why we haven't seen people of that level of complexion, it's because the industry didn't want it, wasn't prepared for it, had made no strides towards having it. So it needs to change from the ground up, is all I'm saying. Burn it down.
Yep. Absolutely. Well, I mean, and I think that's so the black or the berry, I mean,
the sweet or the juice.
I want to say, I felt like this was the blackest song on there. Man, and I just love, this is something that I can't really describe, but except for how I felt when I was watching Get Out, is going in between feeling like maybe laughing or feeling okay and safe to immediately feeling anger.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to say that that's something that feels very, I don't know if it's unique to the Black experience, but I know a lot of Black people feel that way. Like, just being able to, with an image, with a song, with a memory, like, extreme intense anger, and that anger scares people, and knowing that anger scares people, and being used to, I mean, Solange has a song on it, on Seat at the Table, called Mad.
Yeah.
But again, it sounds like somebody who's been to therapy, so she's all like,
well,
calm about it.
Her sister got some angry songs, and that's my favorite Beyonce, is angry Beyonce. Like,
oh, of course.
Love
You're a ring the alarm Beyonce.
Yes, I'm a I've been off Beyonce. I'm a bow down bitches Beyonce. Yes. I am here for it. And I think it scares white people because they're afraid that it's directed at them. Like, white people are like, oh, we had this coming. Oh, that, yeah, okay. And I think that's, it's righteous anger, if you want to think of it that way. And that scares people. It's, not right, but it does. Yeah.
I loved, there was a tweet going around from Wyatt Cenac. Did you see it? Yeah, so Wyatt Cenac is he's a comedian and writer, and it's been on a ton of stuff. He's very funny. Check him out if you don't know him.
He was a Daily Show contributor for a long time.
Exactly. But he wrote this tweet. It kind of reads a little bit like a haiku. I mean, it's not really, but he talks about how for years black people have been telling the world. I have seen this tweet. Yes. About what's been going on. They put it in songs. They put it in shows. And you laughed and you danced and you clapped, but you never listened.
Yeah. Which I think is probably one of the most powerful tweets I've seen in the last few days, where it really is this idea of like, they've been telling you forever. This album came out in 2015. Yeah. That's 4 years just from this album, and that's one piece of art that blatantly says it. So yeah.
Exactly. And the thing is like, we're both stand-up comedians, and I've been thinking about like, what is it going to be like going back on stage? And I'm just like, I'm like, I'm not going to have to change much. Because I have been saying this shit since John. I remember one time you did an impression of me, and you were like, I'm Kristal, race, blah, blah,
blah. I believe it was actually...
But I asked you... Oh, what did you say?
I believe it was actually race. I can't find a date. Race. Yeah. Single race. Because it was back before you met your current boyfriend. Yeah.
Yes. But yeah, I'm just like, yeah, I don't think I'll have to change. Like,
I'm gonna go out on a limb and say this is the time when we go back This is the time to say the shit that you thought white people weren't ready for, because fuck it. Like,
yeah,
fuck it. Say it. All of it. Time is now.
I mean, it is a time now, and the part of the problem is like, especially with comedy, is at the end of the day you want the laugh, and some people are willing. I think it goes back. I mean, it's so apropos of this album, because I do feel that tension of being an artist and wanting to be myself and say what I mean, but also understanding that the goal is a certain thing. Like for Kendrick, the goal is to communicate a message, and the goal is to make something that he believes is music.
Right.
Right? Because at the end of the day, if it's not music, that's not his goal. Like, he's a musician. Right. He's a writer. You know what I mean? And so for me, as a comedian, it doesn't matter to me that it is a structurally sound joke. If it doesn't get the laugh, then that I've missed the goal, right?
Well, and I feel like that laugh is transformative. That laugh, just like this music, is a vehicle for getting those stronger and hard to talk about things across in a way that people will listen, even if they wouldn't listen if you said it in a direct way. You know, I have talked about this a lot of times where people argue that comedians shouldn't be political. And I'm like, I feel like comedians have a duty to be political, because it's a format in which we can talk to you with your guard down and make you reconsider things that you may have felt super strongly about. And now that you've heard it in kind of a different way and you're like, yeah, that's right, that was kind of funny, that can start to wear down those walls. Yeah. And I think we have a duty to do that.
Yeah. So, yeah, and this is the other thing too, is I was really wary about, I've always been wary about management and that level of the comedy industry, specifically for a lot of the reasons that he's talking about. Like, I think it's the mixture of, one, not wanting to be turned into something that I'm not, but also two, like, I've seen people talk about it recently. Like, I don't know how much I want to have white people be making money off of me. Like, I don't know how else to say it.
That's
but
fair.
Like, because they're not hiring at all levels, right? Like right now, what we're seeing is like a lot of calls to, quote unquote, fill writing spots in the industry, but it's like, or fill spots wherever. But there's some people who are pushing back and saying, okay, but who else is in the organization that I'm going to be writing for or working for?
Who's on the board? Who's the CEO?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because if you just let one of us in at a time, you're gonna. We go right back to the tokenism. We go right back to,
it can't just be Shonda Rhimes.
Yes. Yeah.
We also need a bunch of other people. Like, we need multiple Shonda Rhimes.
And I will say to David Lindelof's credit, David Lindelof was I think the showrunner, head writer of Watchmen.
Yep.
Which, if you haven't seen it, it's incredible. You need to see it. Also, people be wearing masks in that too.
Girl, just like it is like scarily accurate. Because it was out a few months back, and like at the beginning of quarantine, my husband was like, I gotta finish Watchmen, and I watched like a couple clips, and now I'm watching the news just like, oh no. They warned us. They tried to warn us.
They tried to warn us. But David Lindelof, I heard some of the writers talking about what it was like to write in that writing room. And one of the things that is to his credit, in my opinion, and I will shout this out, even though I don't like to, like, I don't know. Well, you know what I mean. But I'm shouting this out because I feel like it's such a good example of the way that you incorporate diversity. which is that he had a team of people who were diverse and who also felt comfortable to call him out.
Mm-hmm.
So when he made a suggestion, he said, I need to have the kind of environment where they feel just as comfortable telling me that this is either it's too on the nose or it's rubbing me the wrong way. I think we need to change it to this.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you have the comfortability as a minority in a room to challenge your white head writer, that's the kind of thing where we get pieces of art that are reflective of society, that don't just tell the heavy-handed story that the people in charge want you to hear.
Yeah, absolutely.
So kudos to Watchmen for literally predicting the future.
Yeah, terrifying. And this comes from somebody I read the graphic novel back in the day. I actually enjoyed the first movie version. I know not everyone did. I did. Whatever. And I read the prequels, and this is basically an extrapolation on some of that. And to hear where they went with it, and then to see pieces of it, I was just like, oh, that is where that would go. Like that is what would happen. And the only difference is that we don't have a giant naked penis, blue penis, walking around the White House. I'm pretty sure it's orange.
Or a squid falling from the sky.
Or a squid falling from the sky. Yeah. Giant squid. Yeah.
So overall, I'm going to give, I don't even know if I can give this hair picks.
I mean, they already gave it a Pulitzer.
I know, sure, they sure did. Kendrick doesn't need my flowers. He's got enough.
Kendrick needs our support. Start playing Kendrick for your white friends that haven't heard Kendrick yet. Or rather, play the uncomfortable Kendrick songs for your white friends. Because white people have a tendency to be like, I love Kendrick Lamar. I love Be Humble. And then like not listen to any of the rest of it. Yeah.
And definitely, if you're Black, please listen to this album. Even if you don't consider yourself a hip hop fan or a rap fan, like this is, I feel like this is required Black homework.
Yeah,
it's so good because, and I would say too, like, I mean, give it several listens, and read up on it, because beyond just the lyrics, there's several referential things in the lyrics, but there's also a lot of references in the music itself, like in terms of the things that they sample, things from George Clinton, and
it's Black when Funkadelic is there.
Yes, it's so Black and so purposeful. Like, so on, everything is so on purpose, and I love it. So don't let your ex keep you from Kendrick Lamar.
I almost want to list out, I'm like, what is Black homework? Roots, obviously. This.
Color Purple,
obviously. Book or movie. I would say either or both. Although I would say movie is probably accessible culture-wise. That season of Star Trek with the first interracial kiss. I'm kidding. But, I feel like there's a lot of things that we could add to a list of like Black homework that.
Oh yeah.
I almost want to like send us what you think should be Black homework.
Absolutely,
for white people.
Right. You can write us at blackcardrehab@gmail.com and tell us what you consider Black homework and what we should, put on our list. And look, if I haven't done it, I will start doing it. I'm going to catch up. I'm behind. Okay.
And if you're white and you want to educate yourself, feel free to also do the things on that list. Couldn't hurt you. At worst, you get to experience The Color Purple, which is a classic and a masterpiece. So,
Yes, and then you'll understand what people are doing when they're pointing two fingers at you and looking at you crazy.
And why Oprah is queen.
Right. Oh, Oprah gets a shout out in this as well.
Yeah.
And To Pimp a Butterfly. I love that. All right. Well, everybody, listen to the album and share the podcast with a friend. Thank you to everybody who's been sharing it so far. It has meant a lot.